Welcome back everybody to another episode of MOTOBOB Vlogs. And today we've actually got a beautiful, sunny, almost summer-esque day. Yet we're still in the middle of spring, which is quite something. And I'm out on the Honda CB750 Hornet. Very excited to be on this bike. I just got back from Portugal the other day, riding the new Transalp XL750, with which this bike shares its engine, electronics, some of the chassis, and I really enjoyed the Transalp, and so I thought it'd be nice to get out on this for a little bit more fun with this engine, because it pretty much is the standout feature of this bike. Gotta say as well, we had worse weather in Portugal than I've got today here, so yes, very fortunate indeed, although you can see a lot of debris on the road from all the rain and snow and salting and all that kind of thing, but dry enough to have some fun. And it's not, you know, ridiculously powerful, this bike. 90.5 horsepower peak. So right in that sweet spot that I always talk about for road bikes, where there's enough. It's fun, but... Whoa, actually it is wet here. Yeah, there's enough, but it's not silly getting carried away kind of power. And I've got to say though, and I find this quite interesting, because you know, when you go on a launch for a bike like this, like I did last year, and you come away from it feeling like super positive about a bike, I think I've done enough now that I'm getting quite confident about what I feel about the bike when I'm out on the trip. But it has to be said, you're out on Spanish roads in Spanish weather. We had a good trip for weather on that particular bike. Incredible roads. I mean, look at some of the drone footage they gave us when we were riding that bike. It was just spectacular. And so in some ways you're kind of thinking, well, of course it feels fun to ride this bike, because it'd be fun to ride almost any bike on those roads. But specifically this bike really did impress me. Like I say, the engine being a big part of that, and the fact that it pulls so well up to the red line, despite looking like potentially quite a bland parallel twin. The handling as well is very nimble, and the throttle response is so lively. It's not at all bland. I think this is the thing. A lot of people, when they saw this bike announced last year just before EICMA, they looked at the spec sheets, maybe the styling as well a little bit is to blame, and I think people were thinking, well, that just looks like another bland Honda, as they have this reputation for, which I don't personally necessarily really agree with. But I'll tell you what, you couldn't be more wrong about this little bargain of a bike. As a quick aside, the reason I don't necessarily agree with that is because some of the Hondas I've ridden have been some of the most memorable bikes I've borrowed. Things like the Africa Twin has bags of character and feel and grunt, and then you got bikes like the Goldwing, which is just phenomenal. I mean, the engine, no one else makes a flat six. To me, they're quite interesting bikes, but I do get it in this sort of price range, where they're building to a budget a little bit more, that you might expect this to come out a little flavorless, but I think this is a lot of fun for your buck. And the thing is, you know, it's nice for me to experience this bike in the UK and see what that feels like. But also, Honda seem to have managed to get hold of an incredibly large allocation of UK press bikes. Maybe that's how seriously they're taking this bike in terms of it being important for their sales numbers. I know it's not a massive average order value, if you will. You know, each bike isn't anywhere near what you get for selling a Goldwing, but just the volumes of MT-07s being sold. And yeah, pretty much all the motorcycle channels that I follow in the UK, maybe not all of them, but a lot of UK motorcycle channels, and a lot of the publications and websites and whatnot, all seem to have been able to get hold of these pretty quickly. And the verdict seems to be pretty good across the board, and potentially surprising people with just how fun it is. Back when I reviewed it on the launch, I said that the engine isn't like a... You see that, how quickly it picks up? It's not like a, you know, think of like a parallel twin, like a Bonnie, where it's low revving and mid-range biased. It's willing to rev in the same way that like a KTM style parallel twin is. And I just think it's so much fun because of it. You know, it's usable in the mid-range and stuff. And that obviously came to the fore on the Transalp, which is going to be used for more sort of practical duties. But even this bike, you might want to take it into town, you might want to use it for commuting, and then also some fun weekend rides as well. But it just has that top end that's required to make it actually fun to ride, more so than an MT-07, which is loads of fun as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not super naked territory. You have to have realistic expectations of what a bike like this is going to do. And you can absolutely tell they've geared it towards newer riders and commuters and that kind of thing, because it's 795mm in the seat. So it feels like a bike that's easy to get on with around town, and you know, something the newer riders could get on with. It's 190 kilograms curb, so not massively heavy either. A very manageable bike. That's what it really is like right in that sweet spot of sort of somewhat beginner friendly, but you can grow into it, and you're probably not going to want to sell it like after a few months after you've learned. But also there is enough entertainment there for someone who's a bit more experienced. I mean, if you're into your big bikes but you want something for commutes that's still going to give you some kicks, this would be a brilliant choice in my opinion. Also, I think, you know, if you're somebody who's looking for a bit of a wheelie monster, then this will certainly do the job. You know, especially in this sport mode, the throttle response is very lively, to the point where I can see the purpose of having standard or rain just for more chilled out riding. Sometimes I just stick bikes in sport and have done with it, but this, it's a very pronounced liveliness that I think really is suited for silly riding. And yeah, it's nice to have the other options. But a quick flick of the wrist in sport would definitely have the front wheel skipping around. No need to clutch up in second, he said, on a purely hypothetical basis. Then you've got decent braking. It's not the fanciest stuff, but at this price I think what you want is something that's good enough and well set up, and it does that. Not particularly bitey, needs a bit of a pull, but yeah, lots of power, and yeah, decent progression as well. Again, suspension decent, probably a little bit better than what you'd expect at this price point, because we're so used to bikes like the Z650 from Kawasaki, the MT-07, which have always had, you know, stuff like that that's definitely on the budget side, whereas this gets the Showa separate function upside down front fork. I think it's a Showa shock as well. Not a great deal of adjustability, but come on, 6,999, what are you expecting? And then also the tech package. So as well as that sport mode, there is standard, rain, user, and the Transalp gets gravel as well. But yeah, standard, rain and user, and in user mode you can dial in power delivery, engine braking, and TC. So of course in sport, for example, you've got power set to the max, engine braking to the min, and TC to 1 out of 3, so minimum again, and it's a sliding scale, you know, between that, standard and rain. On this bike we've got the quick shifter accessory fitted as well. That's about 240 quid I think. Really good. Not for everybody, so when you're trying to build a bike that's aggressively priced, to me it makes sense to fit that as an accessory, because, you know, it gives punters who want it the option. And then also we've got this SC Project accessory exhaust, which is why I've just pulled up here under a tunnel. You have a little look at that. Lovely carbon end cap, carbon finisher here, sort of a Kropovich levels of premium finish. And also sounds great if you ask me. 900 quid is a lot though for a 7 grand bike. You've got to really want it. I wouldn't say it's massively louder than the stock exhaust, because it's an official accessory, so of course it's got to be homologated, but it does sound decent. Really, I think it's just for the way it looks. It really does look very nice. But yeah, not a lot louder. It does sound a little bit more meaty, but of course you've got that interesting exhaust design on the standard bike with the big exit, and that's to give a bassiness and richness to the low rev stuff. And then when you give it the gas and it starts revving up, it pushes air through a smaller exit that gives it a bark and a rasp and a sort of snarly sound, and you get that on the Transalp as well. Both of those sounded great if you ask me. In fact, here are a couple of flybys from the Hornet launch, see what you think. But yeah, brilliant all-round package, this bike. I'm so grateful to Honda for dropping it off with me just to have a little bit more time with. Unfortunately, the weather's been pretty trash, but it has looked good sat in the studio, and just today managed to get a little ride in and enjoy it once again. And I think it's only confirmed what I felt about it initially, which is that this is a brilliant bike, especially at this exceptional launch price. Both the Transalp and this bike seem to be you know, prided on the launch price. It really does look good versus the competition, even bikes that are less well spec'd, and so I think it's certainly worth your consideration at the moment. Let's see what happens. Launch prices always creep up, but I'd say this is definitely one to look at if you're looking for a middleweight naked bike. I may even go as far to say as it might be as fun as the Trident, and that surprises me to say that. I mean, that bike does come in a little more expensive anyway now, but I think the handling on that bike's great. The tech package as well is really good, and of course you get a triple engine, which is a USP, I suppose, at that price point. And so I think that would have been the bike I'd always recommend if you're looking for, you know, something in that range. The MT-07 is great as well, but it is starting to look a little bit long in the tooth compared to some of these bikes that are coming out now. But yeah, I think really for me, honestly, if it was my cash, it'd be between this and the Trident. The Trident, I still think is probably the better handling bike. The triple does give it a certain excitement, but this is more like a silly, playful, like I say, KTMS, lively, daft, sort of makes you want to ride a bit silly kind of bike, and that's by no means a bad thing. It still handles great, very impressively featured for the price, but I think it's just the playful, puppy fun factor that make it so memorable to ride. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed a little ride on the new Hornet. I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below, so do let me know. Hope everyone's doing well. Let me know what you've been up to. I hope a few people managed to get out on a ride today, because it looks like the best dry weather for the next 2 weeks. I'm off to Seville tonight or tomorrow for a trip with BMW. We're going to ride the R1250R and the R1250RS, as well as the S1000RR on the track and the new F900R Cup bike, so should be quite a trip. So yeah, if you're new here, you just found this channel, it's more of the on the bike, just off the cuff kind of stuff, and so please do hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.